Welcome to the press briefing. We have on stage Dr. Chuang Shuk Kwan, Head of Communicable Disease Branch Center for Health Protection, and Dr. Lau Ka-hin, Chief Manager, Hospital Authority. The two doctors will update you on the Hospital Authority and the caseload and so on. First, Dr. Lau. Good afternoon. First of all, let me give you an update on the Hospital Authority. We have 2,387 confirmed patients in hospital. 387 of them are newly confirmed cases. For patients in isolation facilities, there are 1,323. Of those, 523 are in the isolation wards, 178 are in second-tier isolation ward, 622 are in the North Lantau Hospital, Hong Kong Infection Control Center. There are also 156 patients in the AWE COVID-19 treatment center. In total, there should be 1,479 patients in our isolation facilities. Of those, 263 are new cases. And 5 patients are reported to be in critical condition, 12 in serious condition. Among patients in hospital, 39 are critical and 33 are in serious condition. Of those, 12 of the critical patients are in the ICU facilities. And then there are 2 cases of serious condition. The first case, a 17-month-old boy. Now, he had a fever yesterday, and also, and then he also had a brief moment of no breathing, and then he was sent to the Yan Chai Hospital Accident and Emergency Department. He was eventually transferred to the Queen Mary Hospital. Now, after treatment, the convulsion stopped, and then we did a PCR test, and the result came back positive. The CD value is 23.6. The toddler is now in the ICU of the Princess Margaret Hospital rather than Queen Mary Hospital. He's in Princess Margaret Hospital, and then he's still in a serious condition. That toddler had the first dose of Sinovac vaccine yesterday. We checked with Dr. Kwan Yik-wah, pediatric specialist, and also Professor Kwan. Both of them assessed the case, and they believe the boy's condition is due to the COVID infection and has nothing to do with the vaccination. Medical staff are now closely monitoring the toddler, and test and treatment will be administered. For the family members of the toddler, so far the RAT results are negative. There's another 10-year-old boy. On the 22nd of August, that is Monday, he started to have high fever. On the same day, his RAT test result was positive. And then 2 days ago, the 25th of August, in the evening, the boy had difficulties breathing. He went to the Characters Hospital A and E department for treatment, and then he was sent to hospital, and then yesterday was transferred to the pediatric ICU of the Princess Margaret Hospital. The boy is now in a serious condition. Of death cases, 4 new cases have been reported, 2 males and 2 females aged between 69 to 91. 2 of the deceased patients have not completed 3 doses of vaccine. I will briefly go through the 4 cases. The first case, a male, age 69. He lived with his family. On record, he had 3 doses of vaccine. Then he had various chronic illnesses, including heart disease, hypertension, high blood, also apnea, and even muscle atrophy. And then on the 25th of August, the patient suffered from cough and mild breathing difficulties. and then he did an RAT. The result at the time was negative. Then his wife found in the early morning of the 26th of August, found that he was unconscious in bed, and so an ambulance was called, and then the ambulanceman found that the patient had no heartbeat. So the patient was immediately sent to the Eastern Hospital A&E department, and there were no signs of life. There was no heartbeat, and then resuscitation was carried out. At the time, the RAT result was positive, but unfortunately, that patient passed away at the A&E department. Because he passed away at the A&E department, so the patient was sent to public mortuary, and the forensic scientists will investigate into his cause of death. And second patient, 73-year female who had 2 doses of vaccine. She had diabetes, hypertension, and hyperlipidemia. He also had terminal stage of cancer in the uterus, and then she went for a consultation to the Chuen Mun Hospital, and because and then she had swollen feet and painful chest and so on, and then she was sent to the medicine ward of the Chuen Mun Hospital, and then RAT was conducted. The result was positive, and then PCR was conducted. The CT value was 19.7, and then we've learned that her daughter was also RAT positive. Now, she was admitted to hospital on the 16th of August, and then immediately we found that she had COVID-19, so we administered an oral medication for COVID. And then she was doing well, actually, all along. Her CT value kept going up, but then in the early mornings of early hours of August of 26, her heartbeat stopped, and we tried to resuscitate her, but unfortunately she passed away because it was a sudden, death with her heart stopping to beat. So we couldn't identify cause of death, and so she would again be referred to the forensic science, the pathologist, the coroner rather. And then the third patient, a 77-year-old male living in a residential care home for the elderly. He had hypertension. He had B12 deficiency. He couldn't walk well, and also he was unable to, it's not possible to communicate with him. And then on the 11th of August, he was sent to the A&E department because his PCR test result was positive. So we arranged for him to be admitted. Now, he went to the North Lantau Hospital A&E department, and then we transferred him to the ward, and the CT value at the time was 29.9. Remdesivir was administered at once, and then he went to the Princess Margaret Hospital, the surgical ward, because there was obstruction in his colon, and then he was eventually transferred back to the North Lantau Hospital, Hong Kong Infection Control Center. Now, he had previous problems with such obstruction. He went to the Princess Margaret Hospital twice for the same reason, but unfortunately he passed away on the 26th of August. The last case, 91-year-old female, again, a resident of a residential care home. She had diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. She had stroke before. She also had dementia. On the 21st of August, she had difficulties breathing, and then her physical condition deteriorated gradually, and so she was sent to the accident and emergency department, and then she was eventually transferred to a medicine ward. In the first 2 days, her PCR test did not show any positive result, and then on the 3rd day of hospital admission, the PCR test became positive. CT value was 35, and then we kept doing tests, and then the CT value eventually dropped to 28. In fact, the day after that, we administered oral COVID medication, but unfortunately she passed away yesterday. So coming back to patients who have recovered in the past day, 221 T1 patients recovered. Of those, 252 were discharged. And then 2 patients tested positive upon hospital admission. And then 3 patients in the same ward are listed as close contact. Another 121 staff members have become confirmed cases, but then 40 patients have returned to work. So that's all from me for now. Thank you.
Dr. Chang, yesterday we had 8,225 local cases, 1,816 confirmed by PCR, and then 6,409 RAT tested positive and verified, 232 imported, and 210 were done by PCR, 22 RAT. Among the 232 imported cases, 108 were identified at the airport. And then during the stay at the quarantine hotels or being tested between days 1 to 3 at the community testing centers, there were 47 cases detected. For those identified between days 4 to 7, through tests at the community testing centers, there were 58 cases. 19 cases were found during the days 8 to 10. Most of them had a higher CT value. Most of them would be regarded as positive cases. And then they came from 43 countries or regions. 7 had more than 10 cases. 31 cases from UK, 30 cases from the Philippines, 24 from Thailand, 22 from Canada, and then India, 17, 11, Singapore. For the other 36 countries or regions, they imported less than 10 cases. Death cases, 4 more reported today. For the 5th wave, the total number of death cases is 9,441. For residents of the RHCEs and RH for the disabilities, we have got a number of such homes reporting new cases. 1 for the elderly, 4 for the disabled. We have the Lee Ka-shing Care and Care Home, and then we have Hong King Home for the Aged in Tai Po, and then there is Shuttlecock Care Home, Heng Lam Care Home in Chuen Wan, and also the Hong Kong Mental Association Chuk Yuen Home. For schools, today is Saturday, no school today, but still 2 schools have reported cases to us, and as a result, they have to suspend their classes for 1 week. First of all, Ling Kung Kindergarten, 27 students in class N1, 2 students and 1 teacher were infected. They have to suspend their classes for 1 week. And Beverly Kindergarten in Sai Kung, for class PGSA AM class, 13 students, and 2 of them have been infected one after another, so class to be suspended for 1 week. For the variants, again, we have seen an increase again. On the 24th of August, for those samples received, the proportion taken up by suspected cases of BA4 or BA5, it was 48.6. For the other strains, it was maintained at 7.6%. There is BA.2, 0.1, 2.1. The floor is now open to questions. Please wait for the mic to be passed to you. Please identify your media organization. The gentleman in blue in the front. Good afternoon. I'm from Phoenix TV News. Starting from tomorrow, if you have a gathering of 8 to have a meal, then you need to have a RAT test result first. Does it mean that you don't foresee any risk for those gatherings for a meal with less than 8 participants? And then for restaurants, if they allow their customers to enter their premises and yet they are tested positive, what will happen? And then 200 beds have been opened at AWE. 156 beds have already been used. Do you plan to open more beds? And then yesterday it is said that there will be PCR tests for hospital staff on alternate days in relation to the sort of high-risk groups. Well, in relation to the rapid test requirement for dining gatherings, we would like to prevent the risk at large-scale gatherings. Well, for meal gatherings, well, usually you take off your mask, and so we really want to reduce the risk. If there is a positive result as a result of RAT, then the usual procedures should be followed. There is online declaration. I think we all understand that we have already entered stage 3 of the bed mobilization to accept more COVID-19 patients. For AWE, we are opening more beds. For the beginning, we would like to offer 200 beds. We have already admitted 150 plus patients. We believe that the utilization rate or the occupancy rate will increase. Other than the AWE beds, we are going to open more beds at our hospitals. Our view is that there will be 2,500 to 5,000 beds altogether in phase 3. When necessary, we may convert existing hospital beds into COVID-19 beds, and then they would come from the medical ward or the other disciplines, and then the patients will be affected, like angioplasty or bypass operations that have been scheduled would be affected. We'll try our best to reduce the impact on the patients, and we hope we have the understanding of the citizens. For rapid tests, for our staff members, they do it on a daily basis. For other high priority sort of wards, like attending to cancer patients, or if we are talking about outreaching staff members, they are doing it twice a week. In the future, we are going to increase it to once every 2 days. We hope that they will all have a negative result of PCR tests within 48 hours. We are making their preparations. We hope we can do it as soon as possible so as to reduce the risk of having staff affected as a result of the infection of their colleagues. The next, the gentleman in white at the far end in the second row. I'm from the Now TV News. For B.4 and B.5, they are accounting for more and more of our cases. The ratio is increasing. Are you worried that the caseload will surge drastically? And then for the number of patients being admitted to hospitals, it is increasing. When do you expect the beds to be fully taken up? Are you going to liaise with the private hospitals so that they can take some COVID-19 patients so as to take some pressure off your system? We are soon having school reopening again in September. Are you worried that there will be an outbreak in the schools? And if the caseload goes beyond 10,000, would you call for a class suspension, and would you ban activities that would require the taking off of the masks? Yes, for B.4 and B.5 cases, yes, they are accounting for a higher proportion. Most of the B.5 cases are, in fact, increasing all the time. Today, it is approaching 50. This is as expected. For B.5, we believe that it is more infectious, much more infectious than other variants. Therefore, we have anticipated that the rate of increase will be more rapid. But of course, we can't tell when it will peak and the level of cases when it peaks. So we will ask everybody to be on high alert, and then we must maintain our personal hygiene, and we must avoid unnecessary activities. Yes, class will resume in September. The community is seeing a higher level of caseload. For students and teachers, we will see more and more of them being infected because they're part of the community. So we really hope that they will reduce their level of activities before they go back to school, and they need to have daily rapid tests so as to avoid positive cases entering campuses and causing an outbreak in schools. We hope that school activities and class activities will not be too much affected. As to whether there will be other measures, it all depends on the development of the epidemic, and we need to strike a balance. They need to have classes, and also they need to control the infection.
As was mentioned just now, in public hospitals, we are gradually turning beds into ones for taking up patients. There are now 2,300 to 2,400 patients, COVID patients in public hospitals. 1,500 are in isolation wards and beds, such as in the second-tier isolation wards, the Hong Kong Infection Control Center, or the AWE treatment facilities. And then we do have a roadmap and a timetable as to which beds will eventually turn into beds for COVID-19 patients. And then our colleagues already know there is a list of staff members who will be deployed to look after COVID patients. We have a high-level central command center now. The aim is to turn the 7 hospital clusters into a single cluster. That means if we see that in a particular cluster there is a sudden surge in COVID patients, say because there's an outbreak in residential care home for the elderly, and then we will send some of these patients to another cluster, so that the regional cluster will have time to prepare more beds for taking up COVID patients. As I said, in the third stage, there will be 2,500 to 5,000 beds, but we're not going to, convert all these beds overnight, but rather they'll be converted overnight. So we'll start with a portion of beds, and then if there are more patients, then we will slowly turn more beds into COVID beds. As for private hospitals, as you know, we have some 300 beds offered by private hospitals. We're grateful to private hospitals for giving us a hand. As at the evening yesterday, there were 220 patients, COVID patients in private hospitals, say in who are recovering, and then we are sending patients to private hospitals gradually, and private hospitals are very helpful in taking up these patients. And then the hospital authority and the alliance of private hospitals are in continuous discussion, and where there's a need, private hospitals will offer more beds for COVID patients. So if we could free up more beds in hospitals, then both COVID and non-COVID patients could be admitted for treatment. The gentleman on the left.
Some questions from the South China
Would you
Morning
please
Post.
introduce your media organization?
Oh, yeah, I was going to do it. Some questions from the South China Morning Post. First question, we want to ask, are private hospitals being picky in the type of patients that it selects for transfers from public hospitals, such as picking more profitable patients? And we also understand that the government may impose punishment of harsher condition on the leases of uncooperative private hospitals if they continue to not cooperate with the government on these public hospital patient transfers. Is this true? Next, we also want to ask, does the hospital authority have any new figures on the private hospital patient referrals from the public hospitals? Yesterday, the Secretary for Health has said that 3 hospitals themselves have taken up none yesterday. Any change in this situation? Lastly, we also want to ask about, some experts have suggested that the government could allow an exception for COVID-19 patients who are above 70 years old and not vaccinated to not be quarantined in a government facility if they have a named and fully vaccinated carer with them to monitor the patient and arrange for suitable medical care if needed, as a way to minimize public concern about this new measure. What does the government think about this? Thank you so much.
For the 70-year-old without vaccination or who have received only 1 dose of vaccination, we are concerned about their health and would like to put them under monitoring and also early treatment by the hospital authority experts. So I understand that carer can also go with the elderly to these quarantine facilities.
For the
isolation facilities, I'm sure. Yeah.
For the using of the beds in the private hospitals, we now have 350-something beds provided by the private hospitals that hospital authorities can discharge to the patient for further management. What kind of patient we will select is mainly we will select those patients in the recovery phase or for the rehabilitation. From the figures in last evening, there are around 220 patients staying, okay, in the private hospitals, and we have been discussing with the private hospitals about expanding the number of beds for the patients in the coming futures, because we predict that there will be more patients being confirmed COVID-19 and more patients will be admitted to the hospitals. So we need to prepare more beds to cope with the increasing demand.
下一位，
Next, please. On the right, the lady on the last row.
From RTHK. So about the 17-month-old boy in intensive care, how is his condition now and what symptoms has he developed? And also, why did the experts say it's not related to the vaccine he took yesterday? And as Dr. Chuang said, the BA.5 subvariant is highly transmissive. So do you expect cases to accelerate in the near future, especially when schools reopen? Thank you.
Maybe I'll answer first. The BA.5 is highly transmissible, so we expect the cases in the community may further increase at a more faster rate. So the daily RAT test for the students and the teachers aim to prevent confirmed cases to enter the school setting to cause another outbreak in the school. So this measure we'll try to use this measure to prevent outbreaks in the schools, and we'll closely monitor the situation.
For the trial of a 17-month-old boy, initially the boy presented with fever and convulsion, and then after he was admitted to the pediatric intensive care unit of Princess Margaret's Hospital, the convulsion was stopped by the medication. Later, the patient presented COPE, is a kind of infections of the larynx, trachea, and bronchus. Then the patient was given some medications and the COPE was managed. Now the patient is in the serious state, and he is conscious, and he's still receiving different medications, including the remdesivir and other bronchodilator to relieve the problem. We have consulted the expertise in the infectious disease, Dr. Mai Guan, as well as the Professor Lau Yulong of University of Hong Kong. They both reviewed the cases, including the manifestation, the symptoms, the lab result. Both of them agreed that the symptoms should be caused by the viral infections of the COVID-19. And there was no documentation or no history that the COVID vaccine can give rise to COPE. And at the same time, the patient was found to have the viral infection of COVID with CT value 23.6 just a few hours after the COVID infection. So it is not likely. It is very likely that the patient got the infection before the vaccination. So both of them confirmed that the patient's symptoms are caused by the COVID-19 vaccine, and it is not related to the vaccination. The cause is the COVID-19 infection, okay? It's not related to the vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. On the other hand, both of them also said that it is necessary to have COVID-19 vaccination earlier, because it takes time for the vaccine to be effective after injection. If the trial can have the vaccination earlier, or not just this trial, in any trial with age above 6 months old, they can develop a good immune system against COVID-19 virus. If so, they will have less chance to develop complications like COP, like the meningitis, the encephalitis, and also less chance to develop multi-system inflammatory disease, which can happen a few weeks after the COVID-19 infection. So, they confirmed that the cases was related to the COVID-19 infection instead of vaccine.
下一位，右手邊最後嗰行
Last one, please.
Good afternoon. I'm from Mingpao. Dr. Chuang, well, yesterday it was said that for elderly age 17 or above without more than one jab, they will be sent to community isolation centers. Can you say more about that? And recently, how many patients are falling into this category? Do you have sufficient beds to take them in? And then for the two toddlers that you referred to, they are serious. Is it because of crop? And then for the other boy, I would like to know why it is said that he's in serious condition. Is it because of shortness of breath? Now, are you saying that to play safe, all the toddlers who have developed the symptoms will be admitted to pediatric ICU? And then for reinfection, it is said that the percentage is 1 to 2%. Have you really carried out a survey as to how many get reinfected again during the fifth wave? Is it always due to B.4 being 0.5, and then are the symptoms very mild and then will be regarded as having an additional jab? Well, the secretary yesterday said that for those aged 70 or above having no vaccination or one jab only, then when infected, they will be sent to a community isolation facility. It is all because they have a high risk, and then they have a higher chance of getting serious or even passing away. So they should be put under observation and be given medication. This has already started. Yesterday, there were about 10 to 20 such patients. Well, in fact, many elderly people, owing to one reason or other, have already been sent to a community isolation facility. For reinfection, the latest figure remains at 1% or so, less than 2% as far as the ratio is concerned. Well, for the scientific committee, it is said that an infection will be regarded as a vaccination, but it doesn't say that two infections will be regarded as two vaccinations. I don't think we have a great number of such reinfections. We do not see much difference between this group of people and others. As far as the ratio is concerned, well, in fact, not everybody who has got reinfected will have their genome sequencing done. So we'll try to say that it should be quite similar to the community picture. So some of them have suffered from L452R or others. For the 17-month-old boy, he first developed fever and convulsions. And in fact, there were a number of attacks, and then he was admitted to Yanchai Hospital and he was given medication. And then he went to the pediatric ICU of Princess Margaret Hospital. We continued to prescribe medicine to him, and the convulsion stopped. And we had a computer scan, and the result was normal. The CT value was 23 at first. Today, it has fallen to 18. In other words, he just had an onset of the disease. In the light of such a development, doctors at the Princess Margaret Hospital prescribed remdesivir to him. He started to have difficulties in breathing. He had croup, and so he was given medication to relax his airways. So his vital signs are okay, and he could open his eyes, and he could move. But of course, he's of a young age. We may not be able to communicate with him. Well, we asked the experts in relation to infectious diseases affecting young people. We also consulted the views of Professor Lau Yulong. Both experts were of the same view, that is, the infection took place before the vaccination. He was given the jab yesterday afternoon, and then at night he had fever as well as convulsion. And then the fever and convulsion should have been caused by the infection. In addition, the cough is a obvious sign that it is the result of infection and has got nothing to do with vaccination. On the contrary, both experts have said that the citizens should have early vaccination so as to develop immunity against the virus, and then we can reduce the symptoms or moderate the symptoms. Say, for example, the fever will not be that high, and then there won't be the chance of convulsions, and then there won't be the development of cough, or maybe there won't be any development of the encephalitis. And then an early vaccination would mean that the body would develop an immunity against the COVID-19 virus, and then all the problems that I've referred to would have been moderated. So please take your young children to have the vaccination as early as possible, and then we can prevent the development of fever, convulsions, and even cough. For the 10-year-old boy, on the 25th in the evening, he went to the A&E department. It was found that he had difficulties in breathing, and we gave him a high dosage of oxygen. We took x-rays of both of his lungs, and there were shadows on both lungs. To play it safe, well, in fact, he went to the Caritas Medical Center in the first place. On seeing his signs and symptoms, he was transferred to the pediatric ICU of the Princess Margaret Hospital. His conditions have stabilized. His vital signs have become stable. Well, his breathing is a bit fast, but then he has stopped his fever. So far, we would call him a patient with serious conditions, but he is conscious. We understand that he has got a vaccination record with 2 jabs. Still the same advice. If circumstances permit, you should take your child for the vaccination as early as possible. Even when infected, the conditions won't worsen, and then the recovery will be faster. The next one, the gentleman in the back, the last to ask questions. Identify yourself. I'm from Cable TV News. Many senior officials have become infected. Are their cases related? Would you tell us about their sort of movements? We won't comment on individual cases. That's the end of today's press conference. Thank you.